Hello and welcome to World History with me, Jake O'Keefe. Want to introduce myself a little bit. I am in my 10th year of teaching and I have taught World History every year. It is my 5th year at Leesville, so at this point I have taught at Leesville for half of my career. For college, I went to Niagara University for my undergraduate, and for my master's degree, I went to Buffalo State College, so I am from Western New York. Couple things I'm involved with in school. I am the team lead for the World History professional learning team. I am a teacher mentor, so I mentor beginning teachers at Leesville, and I chair the Social Justice Club. I'm also working towards my national board certification. Hopefully, I will achieve that, and I will find that out in December. So I really don't like talking about myself, to be honest, but I figure if parents want to go to open house or if they want to watch this video, they probably want to get a sense of who their child's going to be spending quite a bit of time with. So you can probably guess I don't sound like a 2-year-old girl. Um, and that's not me, so I'm the guy in the white there. This is my daughter Tegan, and this is my wife Jessica, and this is my son James. By the time you're watching this, he will probably be born, and that is why I will not be able to attend the first week of school. I will try to make the first day of school because I think that's really, really important. Um, but as far as the rest of that week, I will probably be out to help my wife recover. So about the course, world history says it all. It's everything from the early nomadic peoples to what happened yesterday. Um, Obviously, understanding of vocabulary is important. Cause and effect relationships are important. So those are some skills we'll be practicing throughout the course. One thing that's a little bit different about world history than some other classes is it's a blended course, which means you have honor students together with academic students. So you have some assignments that are different, some that are the same. It's not like, one side of the classroom's for academic, one side's for honors. Everyone's intermixed, intertwined together. When we do group assignments, everything is very carefully chosen. The groups are chosen, the roles, if they're given out for the group, they are chosen based on honors, academic, and academic ability. It's also important to know that um, the reason students are in an honors course is because they signed up for an honors course. It's not because they took a test or their IQ is measured or anything like that. It's just because they want an honors credit, and students who signed up for the academic course just want academic credit. So that's important to know, so there's not some kind of awkwardness between the academic and honors students. It's just basically they're getting what they signed up for. Some student expectations, obviously the first two are pretty standard. Now here is the list of what students need. I know parents like to have that so they can get everything, which I appreciate. The folder binder thing is pretty important. Now if they have the big Trapper Keeper, you probably know what that is. I'm not sure if it's still a thing, but the big binder with all the different folders. That's fine if World History has a section in there. It doesn't have to be a standalone binder or standalone folder. But I do really want to help them organize somewhat. So we have a notebook test check, notebook check, which is for a test grade right before the midterm, right before the final. And those are, again, test grades. They're kind of a big deal. So students can organize their notes. For some, that's a pretty big win. For others, it's just, pretty normal. But I can't help them organize if they don't have something to physically organize them. So folder binder is important. Notebook paper is pretty important also. Trying to save you money and me money and the school money by using notebook paper instead of printing uh, copies all the time. Pen, pencil, obviously highlighter. We're going to do a lot of reading, of course. It's history class, and we're trying to increase that literacy rate, so a lot of students benefit from using a highlighter. So some parent expectations, and I know it's kind of awkward, but most parents already know these things and they're great about them. But I guess those parents don't stick out as much as parents who don't. So I do want to just kind of establish this, and I don't think anyone intentionally does things to kind of stymie what I'm doing, but it happens, right? Like, for example, if I want my kid to be able to sleep by themselves and me not having to sit there and rub their back for 3 hours before they fall asleep, they're probably going to cry at first. They're not used to that. I walk away and they cry, and if I can't deal with them crying, then I'm just going to sit there and rub their back. They fall asleep till they're 16, and that's going to get weird, and I don't want to do that. So it's best for them to kind of have to, you know, cry metaphorically. It's not going to be easy for them, but that's how we learn. We don't really learn just by having things be easy for us. So that's what I'm going to ask you, is kind of be okay with them maybe not having the easiest ride. Well, a couple bumps are going to help you out. So responsibility is important. Okay, their current events are due, for example, that's their homework, and I'll talk about that later, due at the end of the month. They have an entire month to do it. So if they don't do it, and I get an email from a parent complaining that, well, they had a really rough night and they just weren't able to do it, my question would be, why didn't they do it the 30 other days of the month? And why are you kind of giving them an excuse to not do their work? That's part of responsibility. So, self-advocacy also. If they have a question, then they should ask me. If they think that I graded something unfairly, then they should address me about it. Not really the parent, because first of all, that's something that they have to learn how to do, right? It might be uncomfortable, but that's life. Sometimes things are going to be uncomfortable. Um, Also, the student and I have a rapport, and if I have to explain to the parent why I grade the way I did, I might have to go over the whole lesson, and the student already knows the stuff. So it's easier and it's better for the student to address these things by themselves. If they miss school, if they're not super sick, then they should be able to email me and ask me what they missed. Things like that, that should be done by the student. If they get a bad grade, maybe that's an F, maybe it's a 99, and they don't like that, that's okay. Most grades are pretty much all grades, since I have a lot of grades that go in the grade book, so really one grade is pretty inconsequential. It's a learning experience. They get a bad grade because they slacked off, or they were, focused on their phone and I didn't catch them. That's how they learn. So they have to learn from failures. If you don't fail, then you're never going to learn. So please let that happen. Hopefully not very often. Cell phones, obviously, those are a pretty big deal. We have the pouches, which basically what those do is they cut off reception so that students will receive snaps or texts or whatever they send each other. Um, and that's pretty clutch, because they might have the phone in their pocket, it might be away, but when they get a group text, something happens to their friends and they're getting all these texts one every 5 seconds, that's going to distract them. Even if it's in their pocket, even if it's in their book bag, they still hear it. They want to see what's going on. They're not really focused on what I'm teaching them anymore. So if it's off, if it's in the pouch, those are, I think, the best ways to go about that. If it's out and if it's distracting their learning, of course there has to be a consequence. Now, we will use their phones for educational reasons. I'll show you one of the apps that we use to study with, to research. So I have 10 laptops for the classroom. There's probably going to be 35 students in each class, so not enough. So if they have their phone and they want to use it for school-related activities, that's actually encouraged. It's just important to know when to use the phone. A couple skills that I want to impart on my students. Collaboration is a big one. There's not any careers out there that you can just work completely by yourself that I can think of, that I know of. And if you know them, let me know. Maybe that would be a second career choice if I want to change it. No, but that's again, it's super important that students are able to know how to work together. Literacy is one of our goals of our school, is to increase literary skills. And of course, in history, there's a lot of reading that go along with it, and interpretation of readings. Empathy is a skill. It's not something you learn. It's not like riding a bike or how to hit a baseball. It is very much a skill that you need to practice to understand both sides of an issue, and I do that a lot. I always try to, even if it's a current event, I guess especially if it's a current event, I try to offer both sides. Here's how one side sees it. Here's how the other side sees it. Now, based on your morals and based on your outlook of the world, how do you, what do you think? And the more we do exercises like that, the better they are to be able to empathize. And a lot of the real nasty things that have happened in history happen because people didn't empathize. Interpersonal skills, of course, for freshmen, that's an important one. It is an awkward stage of life. At least it was for me. Maybe it wasn't for you, but it probably was. Uh, and again, just practice is something that, and it's usually pretty ugly at first, but I try to. I know freshmen get in their little comfort zone, like, oh, I found a buddy. We play Fortnite together. We're going to work on projects together all the time. But what are you really learning from that? Again, you don't really learn very much being completely comfortable. So I try to switch up groups and partners as much as I can so that they get to meet different people and see their perspectives on things. And I think that's where more learning takes place. Research skills are important. Of course, most students at Leesville are college bound, and even if you're not, you still are going to have to research things and find and be able to access information, credible information throughout your life. So that's something that we'll work on. And I mentioned before the notebook organization is a big one, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit here. Here's the grading scales. To the left, it's a 10-point scale. On the right, you have my class scale in all world history and in all of Leesville follows this scale. So homework is 15%, and classwork as well. I have classwork on the intermediate, and it really depends because if we do a quick 35, 40-minute assignment, it's going to be in the minor category. If we do a 2-day assignment, it's not really a project, but it's not a minor assessment either. It would be an intermediate. And then quizzes are intermediate, major assignments, tests, projects, and the notebook checks. Again, the notebook checks are twice a semester, and they need to have all their notes filled out. It's going to be guided notes. They just need to be filled out, and they need to be not lost in a folder or binder, and then they get 100 for a test grade. So it should be a grade booster as long as they can stay organized. And that's something that you as a parent could definitely help out with. Now, I said I would talk about the current events, this monthly homework assignment, which, by the way, remember, it's a minor assessment, 15%. The point of this is really to teach them responsibility. Homework is really good for math, and it's really good for like a language, but it's not that effective for social studies because it's not really necessarily a skill that you can practice. There are some skills involved, of course, with social studies, but I don't really want to give homework just to say I give homework. But I do give one assignment because I think it's important for them to A, know current events, B, be able to be responsible and not procrastinate too much, and C, to be able to relate some things that are going on today with what we're learning about in class. Or if I bring something up, hopefully they won't be completely in the dark about it. Even looking for a current event, they'll see headlines of other things that happen, so this will hopefully help them kind of stay in the know of what's going on in the world. Now, this is the only assignment where I don't accept it late because you have a month to do it. They have a month to do it. Parents shouldn't do it. Students have a month to do it. So that is plenty of time. Academic students, it's a 10-sentence assignment. Honor students, it's 15 sentences. That's plenty of time. You have plenty of time to write those sentences. It's not really that big of a deal. It's just finding time to do it. And of course, most students wait to the last day. Every year, I get someone who submits their current event to me December 31st. Like as the ball's dropping on the year, I get an email, which is hilarious. I think I tell students that every year, and one kid was like, "Oh yeah, current events." So don't be that student. I always tell them, but at least they get it in, I guess. So late work, other than current events, 30% off if it's late. Of course, if you're absent, it's not late unless you wait past the 2 days. So if you miss Monday, you have sorry, Tuesday and Wednesday to turn that in. By Thursday, it's a late grade, unless you miss 2 days, and it's 4, and so on and so forth. And if you miss a lot of days, usually, something pretty significant is going on. I'm not going to dock you for that, but it's just mainly do your work on time. So work needs to be made up. It can be made up during personalization time. But we'll talk about that. That's a whole new schedule that we're under this year. But really, it should be made up during lunch or at home. I don't really care when it's done, as long as it's not during my class or another class. But it needs to be done within the due date. If I don't have your work, it's 0 because I don't have it. So how can I give it any kind of a grade? Skipping, basically just don't skip class. Come to class if you're at school. So testing. A lot of students have test anxiety, and I try to quell that as best I can. First of all, you have tests and quizzes on a regular basis. I'm sure students are used to tests and quizzes, but there is a lot of information here. So a lot of what we do, what I test on, is not necessarily facts. I'm not going to say who was the third, emperor of the Han Dynasty, because what's the point? You can just Google that if you need to know it. Why would you even need to know it, to be honest? But historical skills, that's something that is important. Okay, to be able to interpret a map or a chart, that's important. To be able to interpret text, to find motivation behind something, to find bias in text. Those things are important, and that's something that they'll be tested on, including the final exam. The final exam that North Carolina writes, and I'm not allowed to see, is mostly historical skills. Of course, again, I'm not allowed to see it, so I have no idea what's on there. But what's supposed to be on there is questions about historical skills. So our midterm will be similar to that. The unit test will have some of that also, but some will be facts on quizzes and my test. But again, the midterm, if your students are like, I don't have to study for it, they're kind of right, but it's, of course, still important you have to have some kind of knowledge of history to be able to answer a lot of those questions. So it's not totally true if they say that. On the side wall of my classroom will be a calendar. On the whiteboard, it's usually at least 2 weeks ahead, so they can see when tests and quizzes are upcoming. I will also remind them when there's a test and quiz through Remind. So if you want to go ahead and here text this to this number, 81010, and what that does is it registers your number. I'm not sure, I probably can't see your phone number. Not that I would care, but in case you're concerned about that, whatever your name is, I think you have to add your name in there. That comes up, and I am able to text all students who sign up for this and parents if you want to as well. And I can send out reminders. Okay, current events due in 2 days. You have a quiz coming up in 2 days on the Renaissance, for example, and that kind of helps them remember to study for that. And if they need help, you could ask me on that, but I really prefer email for sure, because texting students makes me feel uncomfortable. Even if though it's through an app, it's not my number to their number, it's through the app. Similar to email, but email is definitely the best way to go if there's any questions about anything. All right, so continuing with tests and quizzes, you can review the notes. Vocabulary terms on the notes are in bold print. To be honest, that's not really the best way to study. I don't think. It really depends on the student, though. Some students can read through the notes and they're good. Some students read through the notes and then they're done. They're like, I don't know what I read. That's how I was. So there's Quizlet, and I can show you Quizlet real quick here. Here it is. So students can sign up for this pretty easily. I can give them the link. It's linked on my website, which I'll show you also. You can see there's different flashcards. So this one's nomads. Click it, and it tells you the definition of nomads, and you can go to the next one, so on and so forth. So flashcards, there's different quizzes you can take. There's like a game that you can match the definition to the the term in its time, so you can kind of, you also are able to compare your scores with other people in the class. So I'll show you how that works. Just basically clear it out, and then once you do, there's more sets come up. So all kinds of different ways to review on Quizlet. It's active learning. It's active, I guess, review. Hopefully they already know all these things, but likely there's some things that slip through the cracks. So it's more active than just kind of reading it. You're reading. Hopefully that stuff sticks in your head. And if not, I don't know. So I really, really want to push Quizlet to students. Whoops. Okay. I also will give out some study guides. If it's for the midterm, for sure. For the final, definitely. As far as unit exams, they're usually on specific notes, and just the students are going to study those. And also unit exams are going to be cumulative because the final exam is cumulative. So instead of forgetting about nomads and early civilizations for 3 months, they're going to be reminded of that through review for the those unit tests. I also want to show my website here. A lot of important things are on this website, and you get to see real time how slow my computer is. So while that's loading, here is the URL for my website. So if you go to World History, class resources are really going to be for in-class resources. So charts or readings or some kind of link to an interactive activity that we're using in class are going to be here. So if students miss a day, I might refer them to the class resources. Notes are going to be where all the PowerPoints are for all of the notes. So if they miss a day, they're able to go on the PowerPoint and download it or view it and fill in the notes for the day that they missed. And I'm going to try to record lectures for these starting this year so that they can get all the information instead of just copying down the notes. That's better than nothing, but my lectures are obviously have more information, and of course my lame jokes complete them. Current events is where they find the instructions for how to do the current events. As I get these questions all the time, how do we do those? I forgot. Well, there's a link on the website, real simple instructions. I even give them resources, so they just need to really click on these. So everything is right there at their fingertips. There's the Quizlet that I just talked about, links to that. Ancillary Materials has videos on all the topics that we cover in class. If they're more interested or they don't really get something, sometimes that will help. And then forums are something that we use in class too for like peer reviews, or I can't remember what else we use them for, but not very often. Once in a while, we'll use those forums for sometimes like school-wide things. Just a way to be able to kind of organize everything. So that's the website. Also, my email is on the website. If you don't have it here, if you have any questions about anything, the home page, there it is right there. Contacts, there's my room number, and then some more things about me if you didn't get enough of that. Speaking of forms, when they come in on Monday, I will give them a syllabus and a parent inventory form. Please have that filled out and returned to me as soon as possible. Last thing is wish list. Well, Wake County provides some of these things, but of course, not enough. Notebook paper. Again, if they could all have notebook paper, that'd be great, but that's really not my experience. I end up doing work on construction paper and the back of other worksheets from chemistry or whatever. So if you could donate notebook paper for students that might not be able to get that, I'd appreciate that. Colored pencils and markers, we have some. Of course, those go away because all colored pencils need to be super, super sharp for some reason when students use them, so they don't last all that long. They forget to put caps on markers like my 2-year-old, and they dry out. So if you could donate some of those, Tissues, we have some, but they're like 60 grit sandpaper, so it's up to you. Maybe you want to toughen up your kids. Maybe you want to give them nice fluffy tissues. Either way, we would need some because we don't really have great tissues. Paper towels are also needed quite a bit, believe it or not. But that's my presentation. I appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to the school year.